are coming in hot right off the presses here. Let's get right into talking about what is happening in Haiti. This is so intense and crazy, and a lot of us, and I include myself in this, don't really realize how wild and crazy and really horrendous this actually is, what's going on there. It is it's really bad. So let's talk about that a little bit. Clay, go ahead. You give them the kind of the lowdown here.
Yeah, so not everybody's great at geography, but quick geography lesson. So Haiti's obviously in the Caribbean. It's half. It shares an island. Haiti's on one half, Dominican Republic's on the other half. Dominican Republic has got Puerto Rico off of their coast. Haiti's got Cuba off of their coast. So kind of everybody knows where we're at, but really only, less than 100 miles off of the Florida coast. So proximity wise, close to the United States.
Right.
Haiti has fallen into what has amounted to a massive gang war. Their president was assassinated in 2021 and has been replaced by an unelected volunteer president. Educated man. I think he's a surgeon. His name was, actually, I should say was, because he resigned today.
Yes.
Ariel Henry, I think French pronunciation. He resigned today. And the country has fallen into absolute chaos. There's a guy who goes by the nickname Barbecue, who is the head of, that guy right there.
That guy right there.
He is the gang leader that they've essentially taken over all the major metropolitan areas, high levels of violence. And what it's doing is it's obviously the normal level. Violence in general is bad, but it's affecting now supplies coming in. It's affecting food availability to normal people on top of the violence that they're all afraid of, plus everybody sheltering in place. It's really, really horrible. And Haiti has been asking for help, not just locally, but internationally. The president actually resigned today from Puerto Rico. So he
can't even get back in. He can't get back into the country because they have taken over the airports and the prisons and all of it. So he can't even get into his own country, which is, it's inconceivable, right? To us, it's inconceivable.
Yeah, he left and he went to Africa. He went to Kenya specifically. He was asking for UN help to bring in UN troops to be peacekeepers, essentially, to quell some of the violence, but he went specifically to Kenya and then came back. I think he flew into the DR at first in the Dominican Republic, or maybe they denied him entry and he ended up landing in Puerto Rico. But he has already said that he was going to stay in office until 2025 to provide some stability, and then a duly elected new president would come in 2025. Now, I'm not, I don't know how viable that really was, but I know that was the public statement. But the barbecue guy, the gang leader, has decided that is not applicable. He's not a fan of it, so they have essentially, as you said, taken over all the ports of entry, all of the major city centers, and the level of violence is high. And so he contacted today, the president did, as part of it. He acknowledged in a phone call with Secretary Blinken that he is in fact resigned. He's done, but he asked the U.S. for help as well. So that kind of puts us in a spot on what are we going to do and what are we willing to risk to stabilize this neighbor nation in the Caribbean.
So what would be the choices in that for the U.S. to provide that kind of aid? I mean, because they're essentially in basically a civil war of sorts, right? I mean, this is that's a big thing to get involved in here.
There's a criminal element involved because it is a gang essentially, and I don't think their goal was necessarily to take over the government. I don't think it was a coup in that sort of thing, but it was in response to the current, recently resigned president. And it sounds like his timeline for transition of power in 2025. So that evidently was not acceptable to this criminal element, and they decided to just kind of rise up against the government. Now we have some precedent. The United States military, going back to 1994, there was a dictatorial leader there that we were going to remove from office, and we were about to do it very forcibly. In fact, I have a number of friends who were at Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division at the time, and they had an entire brigade, 3,500 paratroopers, rigged up and flying to Haiti to jump in, parachute operation in, to take over that half of the island. Like,
Wow.
we were not screwing around. Now, President Carter got on the phone back in 1994, and he called the president, the dictatorial leader there in Haiti, and said, "Hey, listen, the 82nd is on their way. We are not messing around anymore." You know, he stepped in as a former president, and that guy basically said, "Okay," and he backed out, and they literally turned the planes around and flew him back.
Wow.
Since then, we've been down there a number of times for humanitarian aid. There was, I want to say it was Christmas time of 2009, Christmas, New Year's 9 to 10. There was an earthquake there. I know we provided some massive relief.
Yes.
I was at Fort Bragg at the time. We ended up sending some guys down there. I know there was a whole brigade of paratroopers that went down there to help. So we've been down there, in and out of there a number of times in the last 20 years. So our options are to go there as the United States. That is an option. Another option is to kind of play the UN leader role and throw a card out there and tell the UN to get off of their ass and do what the UN should be doing, which is missions like this.
Right.
And force that option. But what we can't do based on proximity is sit here and hope that things just work themselves out.
Right. Yeah. You're talking about a place that has, like, I think you said, and I think I have it in my notes here, like 20 plus years of political unrest. You have natural catastrophes that have destroyed them and killed, countless numbers of people. I have the notes. I have the amount here. The deadliest earthquake ever, 2010, killing roughly 250,000 people. I honestly can't wrap my brain around that. An earthquake that killed 250,000 people. I mean, this is just breathtakingly devastating. So you have this place that has, political unrest, natural catastrophes going on, gangs. And now, as far as the gangs, these are some crazy notes that I have here. There's an estimated 200 gangs existing in Haiti, with 23 main ones believed to be operating in the metropolitan area of Port-au-Prince. They controlled, up until recently, they controlled up to 60% of the capital. But that area says it has grown to about 80%. So 80% of their government essentially is being run by criminals. So this is great. Everything about this is so unfathomable, and seems almost impossible to. You would have to force a solution. If we were to come in, you have to force a solution. So you're talking about, obviously, I mean, I don't see another way. How do you get, these are people that just released, all of the prisoners in all of the prisons, just set them free. And they have all combined, like, the gangs are working all together. You never hear that. You don't hear that here. I don't even know what we have for gangs anymore. I know we have them, but I don't even know what they are anymore. But there was never a time, I don't think, where all of the most, prominent gangs in the country decided to say, we're going to all work together and we're going to overthrow the government. We're going to do all of these things. We don't know anything like that. So I don't even understand how to combat that, honestly.
Yeah, I think that this, it's got to be a military operation, and it's got to be, because it's an island or half of an island nation, essentially. You're going to have to force your way in, because they're not going to let you walk in at this point.
No.
I highly, highly doubt that. So now you're talking about a forcible entry operation. So you're either going to talk about helicopters in, parachutes in, sea landing at a port, something like that is going to have to happen. But I don't see this as a permissible entry kind of thing where they just allow you to walk in. And I think it is also going to turn into, at least for a short period of time, a high level of violence. These gangs, like you said, there's a lot of them. They control a lot of territory. They're also enjoying a lot of freedom and a lot of power right now, which I highly doubt they're going to readily give up without a fight. So whoever goes in there, unless the thought or the idea of the American military bringing to bear what it can scares these guys into submission, or likely the UN flight, the white UN with all that stuff, the blue helmets and all that. I don't know if that's going to scare them into submission. I doubt it. So whoever goes in there has got to be prepared to go in shooting, which is really, really sad, because all you're going to do is bring more violence upon that place to bring stability. Sometimes you have to do that. And this is definitely one of those cases, because this is not an easy nut to crack. But based on proximity, we can't ignore this. We can't. As the United States, as a leader in the hemisphere, proximity wise to our own coast, we can't ignore this and hope it goes away. It's just not going to work.
So what is there and there being barbecue and these gang leaders? I don't even want to know why he's called that. I really don't, because I have a feeling it's something horrific. Right? So what's their end game? Because it's not like, this isn't a ransom situation where like, all right, we've got your country and here's our demands. They're just simply taking it over, and that's kind of it, right? I mean, they're not making demands of any sorts, correct?
No, not that I've heard or seen. And also this is not a power play. This is not, an attempt for them to become the government, to overthrow the government. I think truthfully, it goes back to them being a criminal organization that is enjoying a lot of freedom to do whatever they want to do right now. And why would they give that up?
Sure.
It's Chicago in the 1920s. I mean, it's the gangs are running, they're running the place. It's all the old school, kind of things that you think of, the mafia during Prohibition, and they're just doing whatever they want to do. Any politicians that still exist or any remnants of the government are probably working for or bought off by these guys or threatened by them to the point where they're just doing what they're told. But I think even that is far gone. So I think maintaining the status quo of just freedom to do whatever they want and living in the current chaos is perfectly fine with these guys. That will change as resources start to dry up, though. So as food, as fuel, gasoline, as those resources, which are not great in Haiti, by the way, as those things start to dry up and become less and less available, this will become more critical. And these organizations, even as a conglomerate, gang, whatever you want to call it, they're going to have to start making either some concessions or some demands on somebody, because they're going to run out of just about everything, and it's not going to take long.
Right. And of course, then, you run into, then it becomes the conversation of if you cut them off and say, we're not giving you any of the things that you need, you're also cutting off the, millions or, at the very thousands, if not millions of people, innocent people who are in desperate need of those very same things. So, it's like you said, this is an incredibly difficult situation in every possible way, because we and rightly love our humanitarian aid efforts, and oftentimes they're misplaced or displaced or poorly executed, as in the case that we just talked about last week about the airdrop to Hamas or Palestine. And that, of course, was an absolute failure for all the reasons that you laid out, which if you guys missed it, I'm sure you didn't miss it, but if you did, the logical thing that happens is if you're going to airdrop supplies or get supplies in any way, shape, or form, really, the people that are in power are going to get to them first. And so the people that need them desperately are still not going to get them. So there does not seem to be a quick, easy solution to this. And of course, in the meantime, people are suffering, and it's extremely tragic.
Yeah. And so, there's going to be a question of what role does Cuba play in this, like the neighbor nation in the Caribbean, right? What role does Cuba play in this, if any at all? The Dominican Republic is literally the other side of the same island. What role do they play in this? Are they going to provide help of any kind? They are, potentially an ally or an asset and ability to get into Haiti. I mean, it's easy for the Americans to come in on the Dominican Republic side and then go into Haiti, through that if they decide to. Puerto Rico's right there, obviously U.S. territory. So this is not easy because it's islands, right? Geography matters. But like you said, at the end of it all, there is a population there that is suffering. And the longer that this has been going on for a couple of weeks now, weeks, not days, weeks. So the longer we sit on this and we, there's a lack of action on our part or on the United Nations part, the more people are suffering and dying down there in Haiti, innocent people. And it's really just not right. I mean, we've got our noses in the Ukraine, we've got our noses in Israel, and really it seems like every other thing on the planet except for what's closest in proximity to us right now, which is what's going on in Haiti.
Right. And there is going to be some call to action here for, all of the obvious reasons, and, calling on those rightful, compassionate sentiments that, you have to do something. If you're capable of doing something, you have to do something. As you just pointed out, which is a really important thing to point out, this is a close neighbor here. This isn't, far, far away. This is very, very close. So, yeah, we're going to keep watching this one, because it's, yeah, it's sad and scary. And, I think, do I have that picture? Let's see. I mean, this is just a glimpse of what these people are living and what they're dealing with. And that is, talk about despair. Just talk about a scene of despair and hopelessness. And, if you have a heart, it breaks for these people. It really does.
Yeah, and not to drag out the point, but you brought it up earlier. So there's 30 years of political unrest. There's
right.
They're in the Caribbean, so every time a hurricane rolls through, they get battered. Plus, you had the earthquake in late 09, early 10, and then on top of it, whether people know it or not, Haiti was I think the Western Hemisphere AIDS capital for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Right, so it was rampant on their side of the island, and it really was. So add that on top of everything else, right? And now they've got this. So it's a population that really, really needs a helping hand. And unfortunately, I think this is going to take a little bit of violence to solve this problem, at least in the short term, to kind of get things back to stable, which is what those people deserve.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's probably just a question of who's going to be the one to bring the hurt, right? Yep. Like who's going to be the one, and right. I don't know who draws the straw on that one.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. So, to state the obvious, guys, we'll keep an eye on this one. We'll keep watching it. And we always invite your comments and opinions and thoughts on each of the topics that we bring you. And we'd love to know your thoughts on this one in particular. What's your answer? What's your, do you see a solution? Do you see a resolution of this that maybe doesn't involve force? I can't see it. I can't see it not involving force. No. Like you said, we're talking about, hardened criminals who are enjoying their reign of